Hello and welcome to UK Column. I'm Ben Rubin, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Yon. Michael served with the US Special Forces in the 1980s. He became a freelance writer in the 1990s, specializing on reporting on frontline conflicts all around the world. This included spending more time than any other journalist pretty much embedded with US and British forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. And over the past few years, he's been reporting on what he calls a holistic war, a global war that is being carried out against the whole of humanity, which we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to UK Column, Michael.
Thanks for having me on. I'm in Nagoya, Japan. And actually, believe it or not, I've never been a freelance writer, although there's like thousands of articles saying that. I've always been independent, which is a remarkable difference. And I'm just completely independent. And so freelance implies that you're like lawn care service knocking on your doors. Can I publish an article for you? It's like, nope, they're always knocking on my door. And it's very rare that I do it. Very, very rare. It's been, I think, probably years since I've even done one. So in any case, I went to the wars. I went to Iraq, actually was the first major war that I went to because two friends got killed. And it was 3 years into the war before I actually went. So as I actually went to the Iraq war, a lot of people started to say, "Oh, you're an adrenaline junkie," because I did so much combat in the Iraq war. And in fact, I was with the current CENTCOM commander for 5 months before he got shot right in front of me. So he's the current Eric Kurilla. He's running the war right now between Iran and the U.S. part of the, Iran-Israel war. Eric Kurilla, who got shot in front of me. I spent 5 months with him in combat. But I was never an adrenaline junkie. I went to the wars because I didn't trust media, and I had reason not to trust them based on previous life experience when I was in the Army, right? And so I didn't trust them, and I went to the wars, but I didn't go until 3 years into the wars. But once I went hog wild, like Rain Man. I went, 4 years, 2 years in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, massive amounts of combat with British forces, U.S. forces, Afghans, Iraqis, Lithuanians, and some others. And so I was out all the time, and I learned a lot. You learn a lot by going to different wars, right? You learn a lot by coming and going. I've noticed too. I always tell young people, go to at least 4 countries, and you'll learn a lot more about yourself by leaving your country and just traveling around. Just go to like 5, And so I've been to a lot of wars. I've spent years in different conflicts, and whether it's Nepal with the Maoist or in Thailand watching the coups and these sorts of things. Watching these low-level wars, often, like, for instance, what's happening now in Panama, successfully predicted a lot of what's happening. In fact, if people that follow my Substack, and on my Substack, if you watch my Substack and then watch the news 2 or 3 years later, you'll often go, "Oh, wait a minute, where did I see that? Oh, Michael's Substack," right? And it's not like I'm Nostradamus. That's what they started calling me in Afghanistan. I'm not that. I'm just an average intelligence person with a very high above average drive to figure out what's going on, right? So I just read a lot. I go to wars a lot. I study a lot. I travel a lot. And I'm with the right people a lot, right? Whether it's top scientists here in Japan or in the United States or top military people, intel people all around the world. And I learn a lot of things. And at some point, you should always pay very close attention to the enemy, right? Because the enemies typically, in some form or another, they're going to tell you what they're going to do if you know how to read their language, right? When I mean, for instance, let's say their body language. But right now we can see, for instance, the World Economic Forum. Here's an example. The World Economic Forum is a conglomeration of oligarchs, right? Just like the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party is, and the Russians. There's all these different ecosystems of oligarchs, right? Which are frenemies and the enemies at times, right? So these oligarchs are fighting over global resources right now. They're fighting over routes and resources, mainly about routes and resources, right? So they're fighting over Panama Canal. That's why I spend so much time down there. Very successfully predicted what's happening right now. I think Panama is going to end up being split apart. I think Thailand is going to be split apart as well, by the way. I spent a lot of time in Thailand, a great deal of time. If you web search my name in Thailand, you'll see me flying around with the Prime Minister of Thailand in his jet. or you'll see me in a lot of fighting, like really in the fighting, not like in Thailand during the fighting, but actually in the coups, right? 2010 and 14, right? I spent months out in that fighting, 3,000 casualties, right? And so, in Hong Kong, I was there when they kicked me out after 7 months of the fighting between 2019 and 20, right? I'm seeing these things all over the world. And what I'm getting to is our enemies, they tell us what they're going to do, either through actually saying it, like the World Economic Forum constantly is like, we're going to depopulate the world. I mean, they say it with their mouths, right? They're doing it with their actions, right? And that's one of the ways that Masako Ganaha and I successfully predicted the Nord Stream that would be cut. We predicted that many times in advance. We went to BASF plant in Ludwigshafen, Germany, twice in advance, right? So the things that I'm telling you, you can find online. We went to Ludwigshafen, BASF. That's where they started doing the Haber-Bosch process in 1914, which is the Panama Canal opened. 1914, Haber-Bosch process is where you take the natural gas and you combine it with the hydrogen that's in natural gas. You combine the nitrogen that we're breathing into ammonia, right? And you can make ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate, urea, all these things, right? So those are your nitrogenous fertilizers. Now, we know that the enemies want to, the ones that are allegedly on our side, want to depopulate us. They want to flood our countries like the United Kingdom. They want to flood all of Europe. They want to flood Canada, United States, Japan, with people all over the world and destroy us in various ways. But they also want to create massive famines. Massive famines will create, now they say this, right? This isn't me conspiracy theory. They say it, they write it, it's everywhere, right? You got to be a blind monkey not to see this, right? And so,
there's certainly communicating strategy. Yeah, I mean, if you go and read any kind of UN documentation, World Economic Forum documentation, the whole thing's laid out, right? You know, they have a very clear roadmap, and because of the way the system operates, they have to communicate this stuff publicly because they need other people to kind of participate in this system that they're building. There's you mentioned that. Thank you, that's a fantastic introduction. And I wanted to wind back to one of the first things that you mentioned there, actually. And there's a quote that I'm going to take from a really powerful post from your Substack, which you called the hardest post I've had to write. And it was about Eric Kurilla, and maybe we can come back to him. He's clearly in a very important position at the moment, commanding US Central Command, basically overseeing the war in the Middle East, right, as you said, from a US perspective. And you said in that post, we are being destroyed. We are being destroyed. We have no border. America is being destroyed. I mean, that is quite an incredible set of statements for you to make, particularly with the kind of level of access that you have to top people in the US military. And actually that in many ways was directed towards Eric Kurilla himself. Like, when did you first start seeing this? And when you say America is being destroyed, like, what does that actually mean to you?
You know, a lot of our grandparents actually saw it. So, it's not like anything new, right? It's just that it's been a long time coming. Like these wars that we see unfolding, they're actually not new. They're just new to a lot of us, right? Like the pharma wars and that sort of thing. And, Eric Kurilla, by the way, I was just over in Texas and I just got a help. This is like last week. So I was in Texas about a week ago, and I had some young people that I'm training up so that they can see these things, taking them around all over the place. So I got a helicopter and took them over a place called Colony Ridge last week, right? And so I'm showing them this town there. I'm going somewhere with this. I showed them this a city for 200,000 illegal invaders north of Houston. And I took them over this and showed them in the helicopter, right? And then I've already taken people like Daily Wire there and Chris Martinson and I didn't take Chris there. I took them to Darien Gap, and Brett Weinstein took them to Darien Gap. But I took a lot of people there. I took congressmen in the helicopter over there. I've taken them down to the Colony Ridge and that sort of thing. But what I'm getting to is, so I did that in Texas. This is last week. Had them up in the helicopter. Then I go to the airport and I'm flying out from Houston, right? And I fly. I'm going business class because first class is a waste of money. And economy is a waste of time. I have to work, right? I have to study. So I'm in the business class lounge now at my connection in LAX, Los Angeles, right? So I walk in the business lounge there, and look, who do I see? Dave Petraeus, right? Former CIA director and former friend of mine, right? So I look at him, and I'm like, there's Dave Petraeus. And so I'm like, hey, Dave. And so I walk up and I talk with him. This is just last week. I put it on my Substack. It's on my Substack, right? So I walk up to, and I said, Dave, or Dave Petraeus. Like, imagine, I'm like wondering, why is he in the business class lounge? He works for KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts, which is a hugely benefiting from like buying music venues in Netherlands, and from what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Ukraine and all these things, right? I read a book about him like 30 years ago called Barbarians at the Gate, and it's a very interesting book called Barbarians at the Gate about KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts. And so it's a huge, very powerful, who else can just hire the former director of CIA, the DCI, right when he resigns? He resigned because of the sex scandal.
They invented private equity, right? I mean, literally, these were the guys that invented that whole category.
Those are serious dudes. Yeah. And so I walk up to Dave, and I'm like,
Henry Kravis is I think his wife actually is one of the co-presidents of the Bilderberg meetings, and he's also on the steering committee of the Bilderberg meetings. So KKR, I mean, it's a top level outfit for sure.
These are serious players, right? I mean, they are brilliant people. And unfortunately, they're not on our side. If they were on our side, they would get massive support. But I walked up to Dave, and I was like, hey, Dave. And he's, hello. And so we're talking, chatting there in the business class lounge. I'm wondering why he's not on the small jet, because he works for KKR, right? I mean, I've flown around with him in Afghanistan and stuff, in the helicopters. And he was exactly how I left him, looking on his laptop. He's always working. And he's in the business class lounge working on his laptop. So we start talking, and he said our mutual friend, Eric Kurilla, who got shot in front of me in Iraq, the one that you were just talking about, he's the CENTCOM commander. And Dave Petraeus said that, our mutual friend is doing great over in at CENTCOM right now, Central Command. And of course, he could read the look on my face that, we are no longer cooperative. Dave Petraeus pushed the death jab. Eric Kurilla pushed the death jab. And for me, that's a line of no return, right? If you seriously pushed it and you're in a position of severe influence to push the Ukraine war, the death jab, what's happening in Gaza right now, open borders. I was filling Dave Petraeus with a lot of information about what was going on in the Darien Gap, when I was down there. And at one point he said, he's like, something, I'd have to read his message, but it was something like, everybody needs, safety and security or something like that. In other words, it was a globalist talking point, the kind that's destroying the United States.
Right.
And I'm like, seriously, you push. He's not on our team, and it's very distressing because Eric Kurilla, CENTCOM commander, and Dave Petraeus, these two dudes are brilliant, right? They're brilliant, and they're both very courageous. These are not weaklings, right? These are very serious men, and they're on the opposite side, right? They're the most serious men that you can imagine, right? And so that's concerning. But there's serious men on our side as well, right? There's a lot of them as well. So it's not like, but what I'm saying is the other side is not a pushover, right? And, but so in any case, so I had to get to my flight. So I said goodbye to Dave, and I got on the flight, and I actually published about it. Normally I wouldn't publish about meeting somebody like that, because I would just consider that de facto off record. But, he's clearly on OPFOR in opposing forces, right? And so that's really just the things that I'm saying. Literally, if there's anybody that will get you killed talking about, these are the guys, right? They are that tight with Netanyahu, that sort of thing, right? There's no space between them. This is for all the marbles, the most serious people in the world. I would not doubt at this point that we're going to see the Strait of Hormuz closed. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, of course, we're setting up the information game right now. The U.S. and Israelis are. I call it ZF, Zionist forces. They're setting up the information game to close the Strait of Hormuz and blame it on Iran. Now, for instance, you see that they keep trickling out these reports that the Iranian Navy left suddenly, and they were seen loading mines on their ships and that sort of thing. Okay, this begs the question: if Zionist forces, meaning the United States and Israel, actually have air superiority over and naval superiority over Iran, which we should have, Why is their Navy still even existing? Why does the Iranian Navy even still exist if they're about to close the Strait of Hormuz? Now, keep in mind, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, where I'm at right now in Japan will greatly suffer. This could literally contribute directly to famines across the world, especially if other things are suddenly closed, like Suez, which could easily happen. It happened recently, of course, with the Houthis. And if the Panama Canal is suddenly closed and Strait of Malacca for any extended period of time, if you can those 7 or 8 naval chokeholds, that's it. It's over. Especially, I mean, you're going to end up in global famines, is what I'm saying. And so, Strait of Malacca, Strait of Hormuz, Suez, you don't even have to close the Bab el-Mandeb. I mean, Suez and Strait of Malacca, Hormuz will de facto, right? And you don't have to worry about Strait of Gibraltar or Danish Straits or any of that, or Bosphorus. They probably would. But what I'm saying is, if you wanted to really reduce the population on planet Earth, famine would get you there. Especially famine and pandemic and war create something called HOP. There's many causative agents for HOP, human osmotic pressure. Human osmotic pressure is HOP. It's the push and pull of migration. There's many, many causative agents in HOP, but 3 of the major, most acute agents would be pandemic, famine, and war, right? That's what causes huge floods of, like Ireland, the Irish in their famine, which arguably was 1845 to 1854. Of course, people argue that specific dates, but anyway, in that time frame, I went over to Ireland researching this actually, but all these famines create huge amounts of HOP and you end up with diasporas, right? And famines have been a weapon in war since approximately forever in written history. I read about them all the time. I just bought some more books on famine literally in the last hour. And so, because, if you're going to study war at a high level, not just shootouts and all that, I did years of that stuff. That's kindergarten level war. I know if you're in it, it's very severe. It's super severe. If you're in the shootouts and people are screaming around you and getting shot in the face, it's pretty serious, right? It's not kindergarten when you're in that, right? And I've been in that a lot, right? I get it. Totally get it. But you're talking big boy war here. Now you're talking information war. You're talking psychological operations is the most severe form of warfare is information war and PSYOP, right? PSYOP is a subset of information war, right? Now, to run successful PSYOP, one of the main weapons, the main WMD used in war for centuries is intoxicants, whether that be any sort of dope, alcohol, doesn't matter. Intoxicants, right, is the main WMD. That's why, when I went back to Thailand last year, looking at the Strait of Malacca issues down in Singapore and whatnot, and looking at Isthmus where they're trained. Anyway, I'll skip that. But then I saw all these. Suddenly, there's 9,000 and some odd, 9,300 new licenses for cannabis stores, distribution, production, and warehousing. That happened in like approximately 3 years as the bulk of that happened, right? King Rama IX never would have done that, but suddenly you've got this. To me, that's obvious what that is. Thailand is clearly being attacked, and I could talk about this for hours. When I went down to Buenos Aires last year, spent two months in Argentina, going all over the place. Masako Ganaha and I went to a cannabis expo. They're just boom. Now you go to Netherlands, of course, for years. I spent a lot of time in Netherlands. Sometimes I would leave Panama and go to Netherlands because that's another key place, right? And you look at the Dutch are like, yeah, we're free. That's why we can do this. It's like, that's not what's happening, monkey brain. All right, this is what's actually happening. You're under attack. And they've actually got psychologically programmed you to think that's an exhibition of your freedom, is to give your money to the enemy while they weaken you and they diminish you. That's why I wrote dispatches about, 15 years ago when I was in Afghanistan, called The Perfect Evil. The perfect evil is intoxicants, whether that be alcohol, prescription, opium, various dopes that you're going to smoke, whatever. When you're using, for instance, opium, you're sending it, at that time, about 93% of the opium, I think, that was in the United Kingdom, I think was actually coming from Afghanistan. One of the studies, if I remember it accurately. But so now just think about it. If you're the enemy, you're draining money out of the pockets of British people and you're weakening them simultaneously, right? And everybody watching this, everybody, I've never seen an example of where this is not true. Everybody has personally been involved in either people with severe alcohol or drug problems or some severe problem, whether that's yourself or in your home or your something that affects your life. Maybe a drunk runs into a member of your family and kills them or something like that. We've all suffered from that. What I'm getting to is these intoxicants affect us in severe ways, right? If you have a family of 10 people like old school, and just one of them is a drug addict or an severe alcoholic, then that will disrupt the entire everything under that roof, right? That's like a hellfire missile through your roof. That's why intoxicants are that and other reasons are why intoxicants are the major WMD on planet Earth. Now you see Tucker Carlson. I've been on his show. He just came out with a video the other day about all these Chinese dope farms all over America, right? Now, when I go after dope or Joe Rogan, I've declined numerous times offers for potential going on his show. I'm like, I'm not going on dopehead Joe Rogan's show. I don't care if he's the biggest podcast in the whole universe. I'm not going on, right? And people say, oh, you don't understand. You can reach so many people. I'm like, no, here's how. I got a little hatchet. He's got a big tree, and I'm chopping that thing down, right? And right now, he's actually said he stopped doing dope, he stopped drinking, and he's going to church. I don't know if it's true because he habitually lies, but the point is what he's actually doing is he's representing the dope interest, right? That's it. When he and Elon Musk, Rocket Boy, went on the Joe Rogan show and smoked dope in front of millions of young people. That was the two of the most influential people on planet Earth smoking dope in front of young people. That was high-level psychological operations and warfare. That was not bad judgment. That was not these two guys who are supposed to be the smartest, most successful people in the world having a moment of grand stupidity. No, that was actual war. That was an actual attack on us, right? And so, so what I'm getting to is the wars that are going on. It's a comprehensive war. We got the death jabs. A lot of the people that remember during the lockdowns, you could go to all the liquor stores you wanted. You get all the dope you wanted, and you could watch all the TV you wanted. But you can't go be with your friends. You can't go to church. You can't go to funerals. Can't go to weddings. Because this is, if you read the book, Rape of the Mind from 1956 by Juice Merlo, he's a psychologist. Read that book, Rape of the Mind, 1956, Dutch psychologist, really good book. Read that book and read it slowly, read it in quiet, turn off the phone, and focus on that book when you're reading it, because you have to pay attention to this book. You will be much more resilient against the next attacks that come on you. You're still vulnerable, keep in mind, but you can become much less vulnerable by knowing the tactics, right? In fact, once you study brainwashing enough, once you reach Sun Tzu level, your mission then is to recognize when you're being brainwashed, like somebody's putting you in a chokehold and you're blocking that chokehold and you're reversing it and you're putting them out, right? I mean, you brainwash your brainwasher. If you get good at this, don't just play defense victim, say, oh, no. I know what he's doing. Let's play. I accept, right? And then, I accept battle, right? And so
I like that idea. You got to brainwash the brainwasher. I mean, what you're talking about here, Michael, for the uninitiated, this might sound slightly mind-blowing, right? Because what you're describing is a multi-dimensional assault on humanity that's being coordinated by some kind of international criminal cabal that is actually captured the US and Israeli military, by the sounds of it, as a starting point, probably the UK military, the political apparatus that sits around that, the entire cultural and information infrastructure across the Western world, but actually not just the Western world, because you've been talking about Thailand, you've been talking about Japan, we've been talking about bits of the Middle East. Like, who's up on the top level of this pyramid coordinating this whole thing? Like, who are those people?
It's somewhat nebulous, and it's actually architectural structures, right? It's oligarchical architectural structures. Some of it's family based, and this goes back for centuries. So, when I had Brett Weinstein down in the Darien Gap, he's a brilliant man. He's an evolutionary biologist, and he did his PhD work actually in Panama. So we're down in Panama together in the jungle. And Brett said to me what you just said, basically like, well, you keep talking about they, meaning I keep talking about they. who's they? And I was like, actually, I don't know, because it's like, who runs the jungle? Who's running this thing? I'm like, Brett, who runs this jungle? I mean, you got your PhD in this jungle. Who runs this jungle, Brett?
That's
you know what I mean?
That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah. Who does run the jungle? Like, the jungle runs itself, but there's a power dynamic in there, right?
There is, and there are oligarchical systems. For instance, the Chinese Communist Party is one of the oligarchical systems, right? It doesn't rule the world; it's trying to. And keep in mind, globalism is zero new about globalism. I mean, this goes back. This is biblical, right? This goes back, and I read so much old books. Like today, I spent hours reading old stuff, right? And so I'm constantly reading old books, or I'm going to wars, or I'm talking with scientists, or I'm on the border. I've been across the entire U.S. southern border, and I've been to 30 countries in the last 4 years, just looking at the invasions, right? Just the invasions, right? And the food issues and whatnot. I usually go and do multiple things when I'm there: food issues, invasions, death jabs, right? But in any case, in routes and resources, obviously. But over centuries, millennia, it's been routes and resources. Marco Polo shooting off in the 1200s, right? Going to China. Look at his maps, his beautiful map. Look at the route that Marco Polo took, and then overlay it to maps that are today, right? And you'll see he's actually, some of the routes are the same routes. He went through the Strait of Malacca. He went, through like you see right now, Israel, for instance, is supplying weapons, and has been for a long time, to the Azeris in Azerbaijan, who are Shia Muslims who are attacking the Christians in Armenia, right? Why is Israel supplying weapons to Shia Muslims who, Iran is Shia too. So they're constantly saying, oh, the Shia Muslims are going to destroy the world. But then Israel supplies them with weapons and they're doing this openly. This isn't hidden, right? And so the Israelis are openly supplying the weapons. The United States is openly saying, okay, supply the weapons to kill one of the oldest Christian countries in the world, which is Armenia, right? Which has already suffered genocide. I went there about a year and a half ago with Masako Ganaha. We spent, I don't know, maybe a month in Armenia. Then we went up to Georgia and looking at all this. Anyway, what I'm getting to is who is actually protecting. There's one country that's strongly protecting Christian Armenia. Most people are going to have a hard time guessing this, but that country is Iran. Iran, I want to say it crystal clear. The Shia of Iran are protecting the Christians of Armenia from the Shia Azeris, while the Israelis are supplying weapons to the Shia Azeris. So you you have explicitly got Israel supplying weapons to Shia, who are killing and trying their best to genocide Christians, and Iran is protecting them. Why all this drama? And Russia's involved too, obviously. Caspian Sea, routes and resources. Caspian Sea, right? I mean, there's these it's routes and resources, right? And so when people are trying to understand this through simply Christian versus Muslim versus Jew or whatever versus Buddhist or whatever, in reality, you have to look at this much more intense overview, which is routes and resources. And one of those resources is people, right? So whether that's converting people or killing those who won't convert or convict, I'm telling you, the country of Panama will be lucky to survive 10 more years because, and I've told their people of their government this, I've spent a lot of time with them, right? High level government. Like, if you better make the right decisions right now, because you are a juicy lamb wearing a garland of pork chops and you are surrounded by predators who are predacious to each other and you're in the way, right? A lot of people want the Panama Canal, but there's not a lot of people that want Panamanians. You better behave very, very wisely and choose very wisely. You better measure 3 times and cut once with the words that you say, because your life literally depends on it. Your structure of allegedly being in charge of Panama, they're not. Chinese are moving in hard in Panama. The U.S. military is doing, like this week, they've had C-5s coming and going out of Panama. And Executive 737 was on the tarmac at Panama Pacifico just the other day. And there was they were changing out an engine on a C-5 and another one took off. I mean, every day we've got this kind of serious military traffic from the U.S. We've got the Iranians have moved in very hard into in Panama and Venezuela, as have Chinese, as have Russians. It's not like all this war is over there. We've got huge amounts of Iranians and Chinese and Russians and everybody else under the sun in Canada, in the United States, right? And one of the things when the Iranians are constantly calling us, not constantly, but occasionally somebody calls us Satan, and it's the headline news. Oh, we should nuke them because they called us the Great Satan. But meanwhile, we've got people in the United States and the UK and Israel like turning boys into girls and girls into meat products, right? We've got, literally, that's great Satan stuff right there. We went up to Canada, and the actual government, the Canadian government's handing out drugs to Canadians. The videos that we made are horrific, right in front. And the MAID program in Canada, medical assistance in dying. You can go into the hospital, you can go into the MAID system in the morning and be put to death in the same afternoon. That's great Satan stuff, right?
Right.
And it's not like they don't have a point.
That's what's coming down the track in the UK as well. Can we just go back to Panama? Because people who aren't familiar with the geography of Latin America, and as that sort of moves up into North America, this is basically the pinch point, right? This is the land route from South America into the North American continental North American continent, not quite into the US at that point, right? But what would and this is the Darien Gap, this tiny little sliver of land. What were you actually seeing happening down there? You've mentioned a lot of different players, but what are they doing? Like, is this basically a big a human trafficking operation? Is that what you're looking at here?
Of the 7 most critical choke points on planet Earth, Panama is number 1 for the United States. It's this important, right?
Okay.
That's Panama for us, right? If you control the Panama Canal, you're literally controlling one of our arteries. It's that important. It's life and death for the United States, right? We just had an attack submarine go through last week, and a friend of mine showed me the video because he made the video, right? And he was on a ship behind it. And so that was the USS Toledo, right? But what I'm getting to is it's important for our Navy. It's important for our trade. It's also, we don't want our enemies to control it, right? The Panama has been a vital place on Earth since roughly 500 years, right? So the Spanish first were going down there. From outsiders anyway, the Spaniards got there in right about roughly 1500, right? And Balboa was there. He was the first governor of Darien. They called it the Isthmus of Darien at that point. And ever since that time, people dreamed about making a canal across, approximately that time. But they were making routes across. For instance, the Scottish came in 1698-ish or so, and they tried to make a colony in Darien. It's called the Darien Scheme, or there's a fort there called Fort Edinburgh, actually. And so the Scottish, this is very important for UK history, like extremely important for UK history. Like the Scottish tried to make a path between the seas, and actually the best book I've read on Panama, and I have like a whole library on Panama, is called The Path Between the Seas. That's an incredible book. Everybody should read The Path Between the Seas. It's about maybe 40 or 50 years old. And so the path between, maybe 40 years old, but the path between the seas, the Scottish tried to make a path between the seas, and they went there. They sold a bunch of bonds in Scotland, raised a bunch of money, and they went down there, and they tried 2 really serious attempts, lost about 2,000 Scots, and they were defeated by the yellow fever and everything else under the sun. There was more than that, but in any case, so Scotland goes bankrupt, right? So this is key. This affects you right now, right? When Scotland went bankrupt, then comes the Articles of Union, which you're very familiar with. And then Articles of Union in 1706 and 1707. Finally, in 1707, Scotland joins England into the United Kingdom. They joined England into the United Kingdom because they went bankrupt in Darien, Panama, right? That's how important Panama is for people. Now, the Scottish don't seem to know that now. I think it's kind of erased from history, but it's actually quite there. There's old books about it. You can find them instantly. Like in minutes. And again, I've got a whole library on this, but I got all the old maps and stuff. And so then many others came. The Dutch came, they didn't do too. Basically, Panama is the Afghanistan of Central America. But many people tried, right? And then finally the French come, they sold bonds, and they gave it a good shot. They lost a lot of people, thousands and thousands. I've taken many people to their yellow fever cemetery near Panama City. They basically went bankrupt as well. And anyway, they didn't succeed. Then the United States came in and arrogantly thought we could make the Panama Canal, and somehow actually did it. And actually to create Panama, and because the Panama is arguably, well, for the United States, is easily the most strategic piece of land on earth, easily, hands down. For a lot of people in the Middle East, it would be Suez or Strait of Hormuz, or in Asia, Strait of Malacca, right? But for us, Panama, and for a lot of people in the world, Panama, right? And so, so for us to create the Panama Canal after the French then failed, well, Panama was part of Colombia at the time. So we had to create Panama first. So because Panama was part of Colombia, and Colombia didn't want to play ball. So we did all these huge reconnaissances in Mexico, actually, and Nicaragua, of course, everybody knows about that one, and in Colombia, and various reconnaissances in Panama for where should we put the canal. And I've got all these old reports, by the way, like from 1870 report from Seward and all this stuff, right? And the ones from Mexico, the ones from I've got the reports from that time. They're not reprints, right? So that nobody could change the writing, right? And so in all the old maps, I've got like a stack of them, like 5 feet tall, or probably 10 actually. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's and so they did a lot of work, is what I'm getting to. I mean, the fact that I've got that many that are from contemporaneous tells me that there must have been much more. But so then we start to build the canal, right? Now, keep in mind, when you look at the totality of what was going on, it wasn't we're just building the canal. This was global. Like, we were mapping out Japan where I'm at now. I've got the old maps that we did of Japan in the 1890s. And it's all about resources here. Like, here's where the camphor is. Here's where the copper is. Here's where they grow rice. We're doing the same in Philippines, same in Formosa. Taiwan was called Formosa then. All over the world. I got all these maps, man, like over 100, right? Of all these different countries, routes and resources, how these new routes like Suez, which was already opened in 1869, and how these different things, how we're going to be able to globalize the world, right? And so it was much, much bigger than just building a path between the seas. But to do that, we had to create Panama. So on November 3rd, 1903, we sponsored a revolution, which actually then happened on November 3rd, 1903, and the Republic of Panama was born. And then we instantly made an agreement with Panama that we have 10-mile sliver through Panama, and that's America, right? We're going to build a canal right in the middle of it, 5 miles on each side, 10-mile swathe. The rest of it is your country. And we spent a lot of effort, the United States, on stabilizing Panama. So because one of your main security systems is that Panama be stable, right? We wanted Panama to be super stable. We wanted people to get along with each other. We wanted everybody to speak Spanish. You can speak Kuna language. I'm out with the Kuna Indians all the time. You can speak Imbara language. I'm out with Imbara all the time. We message back and forth every day when I'm not in Panama, right? I mean, so I know all these people, right? So, I mean, there's 7 different tribes there, right? You can speak all your languages, but must speak Spanish, because we need a way to bind everybody, try to make them get along, because the Kuna and the Wunan, man, they were duking it out genocidally with each other. That's not stable, So we got everybody calm down, and somehow it worked, right? Because anthropological warfare is like drug warfare. You study, all the different groups, and you got your anthropologists involved, and you study their firmwares, and you find ways to make them get along, right? Now, if you want to make them war with each other, you just reverse the polarity on you won't believe I got a whole library on anthropological warfare. Nobody calls it anthropological warfare but me. But when I first started studying this in special forces, before,
but it seems like a very fitting one.
It's amazing. Some people call it human terrain and all that stuff. But anyway, but the bottom line is, for a long time, we've done everything we can to try to make people get along in America, to try to one of the things that the English were good at, where the Dutch were the opposite. They're always divide and conquer, like in Indonesia or whatever. They're like, Dutch wanted everybody to speak their own languages, right? English were like, everybody needs to speak English. Like when you're in India, I spent about a year in India. The Indians, they'll spend half their time talking bad about English when we talk about that subject. But then the other half, they're like, but the English are actually very good, because the English actually helped us learn how to do the railways and all this stuff. So they kind of like, they see the pluses and minuses. I'm the same way. Like, we got a lot from the English that's extremely positive. One is they did want everybody to speak English, mainly because the only English that speak a foreign language, they're either foreigners or they're spies, right? English just speak English, right? But they wanted everybody to speak English. They wanted everybody to get along, because the English wanted to have colonies that were reasonably harmonious when they weren't making famines. right? The Victorian famines and that sort of stuff. I mean, when I was in the Iraq and Afghan wars with British soldiers, I spent a lot of time with 2 rifles and all those guys, green jackets. I was out with those guys in a lot of combat, different British units. And one of them at one point told me, he goes, we've all had a go at somebody at one point or another. He's talking about in our history I was like, these young infantrymen, they always say the most brilliant things. At one point I was on the Iranian border with a British captain. He was actually English. We were on the Iranian border in Iraq. And so I'm an American. I said, just think about the irony of all this. You're a British captain. We're on the Iranian border in Iraq. And that's weird. An English war correspondent with a British infantry captain in Iraq. You have to understand some history to see how ironic that is.
Order that was drawn by some British imperialists about 150 years ago, right? Like
they were just like drunk with a crayon and made the border, right? And and so it was just the things that this is why you have to study history so much, because you see what's happening now is actually a continuation. It didn't just start, right? Like when I say I think the Strait of Hormuz will be closed, I don't know if it will be, but I'm guessing, just like I didn't know BASF was really going to get blown up. I just kept saying, I think something's going to happen to it. And I know it sounded crazy at the time. Groningen gas field was the same way. We predicted it many times, and then they did close it. And so, I mean, but in Strait of Hormuz, I can see a direct.
Yeah. You're looking at the great game, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about here. This is the great global imperialist game.
This is Kim.
Yeah.
This is Kim. Right? This is a great game, right? Where's Kipling when you need him? I mean, if Kipling were alive today, he'd be running around going, wait a minute, just change the names and it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. You know what? I found this old vaccine book from a British doctor. What's his name? It's from 1889, I think. And I read the whole book. It was about smallpox. Might have been 1882. I can't remember. Anyway, I've got the book. And I read the whole thing. And all you have to do is change the names. And that's what exactly just happened. The title of the book is something like smallpox vaccine is more dangerous and it causes more deaths than it saves or something. And he goes, and you read the book, it's quite brilliant. It's not, you can read it in a couple days. And he goes through all the statistics. He's laying out the fact pattern. He's like, and they're forcing us, they're taking our freedoms away and forcing us to get this dangerous jab that doesn't even stop smallpox. People that don't get the jab still, people that get the jab are still getting smallpox. It just changed the names. And actually, there's at least 20 or 30 books that are similar to that, and that are from that same time frame. Actually, 17 to 1800s. There's a ton of them, man. And all these doctors are like death. They don't call them death jabs, but again, change the names. It's the same with what's happening in Iran and Israel right now. If you look at this from a greater perspective, you'll stop listening to what Netanyahu even says. He's just the latest piece of fruit on the tree, right? So, but look at the larger, the flows of the currents of history of the, if you're listening to what they're saying day to day on CNN or some of those trash things, right? That's just ripples across the water that people are, but underneath that are currents, like the Gulf Stream, right? And the Gulf Stream is routes and resources. There will be war for those routes and resources because it never ends. It's always on. It's just the newest names. And, people that are new to history are very young, so they haven't had a chance to study much yet, as we all were at one time. And, and older people are always talking about stuff and it sounds crazy. But then as you get older, you keep seeing it, like my grandmother. My grandmother told me when I was young, she said, one day you children will be buying bottled water out of the store. She used to say that. And I'd be like, Granny, that's crazy. We're never going to buy bottled water out of the store. And now every single time I open a bottle of water, I think of my grandmother telling me that crazy stuff. And she's like, you read a lot of those books, Michael, but your grandmother's been it a long time. And I'm just telling you, I know what I'm seeing. And she was like Granny Alex Jones.
Yeah, history they say it doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. I think that's what you're describing. Just to go back to the Darien Gap, I watched something. I can't remember now. It was about 6 months ago. You were talking about. I think it was Alejandro Mayorkas, who at the time was the Homeland Director of Homeland Security under Biden. Was down in the Darien Gap Like, what was he doing down there? Like, because again, like what we've described is essentially that the U.S. political, military, economic infrastructure has been weaponized against its own people. So you've got key actors like that are actually coordinating what amounts to an invasion of the American nation. Like, so what was he doing down there? Like, what was the actual sort of
Well,
boots on the ground operation?
he was installed by Zionists, actually. Actually, this is important background. Actually, Mayorkas was Zionists are not Jews, by the way. Zionist is a political organization. And actually, British intelligence was a lot behind, Theodore Herzl and all that stuff. And anyway, in 1899, they were actually selling bonds there, which I actually got one. I bought it in Panama in an antique shop from 1899. Theodore Herzl's on it, right?
Okay.
And you can buy these. They're pretty expensive, but I mean, it's really important. I mean, for me and in my research, it's important. I like to have stuff like that on the wall, because it reminds me, I arrange things in the order that things happen, either drawing them out or whatever. But when you're arranging things, it helps you see things better. But what I'm getting to is, let's go to Alejandro Mayorkas, because that's what you're asking about. And no, he was a child of Sephardic Jews. He's a Sephardic Jew. They were migrants from Cuba. So they came to the United States. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas was installed as a board member on HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, right? The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. He was a board member. Now, if you go to HIAS.org, HAIS.org, you can go on my Substack and see a lot of this stuff. But if you go to HIAS.org, and you'll see they're congratulating him with a letter. They've written a letter like, hey, congratulations, you basically moving on up in the world, and you're the Department of Homeland Security. Now, their office down in Darien province in Panama, the Afghanistan of Central America, where I spend so much time, the highest office in Darien is right beside what I call China Camp, which I've been in China Camp many, many times. I almost leased their office, actually. But highest got the office before I got it. It's right beside one of the invasion camps in Darien, an invasion camp between South America, going through Panama, and then up to the United States, right? And so it's called San Vicente Camp. So I almost got that, and highest got it. Highest, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, is one of the main factors invading the United Kingdom, right? United Nations, along with highest and some others like Catholic Charities in the United States, Lutheran Services, who's who in the zoo. It's hundreds of these guys, right? But highest is one of the major players.
Invading the United Kingdom or the United States? You said kingdom, but I don't know
both
these days.
Both.
Okay.
Both. Oh yeah, I went to I was in that giant mosque in London a couple of years ago. Pretty interesting, right? I mean, I was in Ireland looking at this 2 or 3 years ago, warning about what's happening. Yeah. And I've been all over Europe looking at this, and also not that you're Europe, but you know what I'm saying. So, but what I'm getting to is Alejandro Mayorkas moved up to Department of Homeland Security. Then he came down to Panama. He came down to the Darien Gap, and he went in the camp with the highest people. How do I know that? Because I was there. I was physically present. I had waited for him because I was told that he was coming. So I was just like, if he's coming to Panama, I bet he's going to land in Blackhawks right here. So I waited for 4 days, in the pumpkin patch, and then sure enough, 4 Blackhawks on the 4th day landed right in front of me. I'm like, there he is. And, I thought that he would do it, but, you're still always surprised when you're right about something like that. And I'm like, well, there he is. And so he comes right in front of me, goes into the camp. I got the drone up and, and there he is. Right. And he's down there getting a briefing, which they put on Twitter. Here he is. They put their own photos on Twitter. And I put, drone footage up and other things and other photos. So, yeah, he was there with highest. So, I mean, highest, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society in the United Nations, right, and all these people are the ones doing this. And they are the number one funder of the United Nations is the United States, right? United States is the number one funder of our own invasions, right?
Right. And this is the thing I think people really struggle to understand. Because actually it's the weaponization of the institutional infrastructure against the nation state itself, right? Because this is all about destabilization ultimately, right? They want to destroy the existing nation state system and implement a centralized global system. And to me, ultimately, that's the end point of Zionism, right? It's the ultimate goal is to install a single global government, amongst other things.
Yeah, through centuries of intermarriage and stuff. Now, keep in mind, they don't have to wait till the end to ring the bell and get all the gold. They're making a huge amount of gold all along the way, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this is a highly profitable business, like ultra profitable business or architecture of businesses, globalist. There's, again, different species of globalists, but over a period of many generations, they're all intermarried, and they're next thing you know, they're the director of CIA, the director of FBI, whatever, Homeland Security, NSA, whatever, director of national intelligence. I mean, they're top generals in the military, president, right? I mean, so you've literally, like, hijackers don't create an airplane to hijack; they just hijack an airplane, right? I mean, it's the same with these governments, like. The Zionists, they can't even run a country well. Like Al Qaeda. When I was in Iraq, Al Qaeda was very good at taking over towns and little cities like Bakuba. Like, I was in Bakuba quite a lot. Al Qaeda took it over, right? But Al Qaeda couldn't keep the water on. Al Qaeda couldn't keep the electricity on. Al Qaeda couldn't do crap except kill people and take the country, right? The Zionists are very similar. They can't run a country without creating just more. They're a walking war, right? They're a walking disease, right?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's easy if you apply pressure and you're very conniving, not ultra intelligent, but just conniving, and you work as a tribe, you can eventually take over architectures. It's not difficult to do, right? And it's like everything you touches you. When you can intentionally entangle these vines, right? And over a period of years, you're running the big pharma, you're running the banks, you're running everything. You're in charge of all the information operations because you've got, or at least a significant part, because you're running the media, right? And so these things are easily doable, and they are done. They are done. That's why when I first moved to Poland many years ago, when the wall fell and the East opened up and all that. So I lived in Poland for a couple of years, and I read their what was it called? Anyway, it was their new book on commercial law, right? And something Handlovi, right? It was the handbook on law, right? And I read it. It was a short book at the time. Now it probably would fill up this room, but one of the main things that they stressed was no foreigners or foreign companies can buy any Polish media, ports, railroads, airports, nothing. You can't get any critical infrastructure, including information infrastructure. But the United States cleverly allows Chinese and we've got huge amounts of dual citizenships with Israel. There's no dual citizenship. They're Israeli, right? I mean, straight up. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Because where is the actual loyalty? It doesn't appear to be to the United States. It does not the critical mass anyway. The critical mass of the loyalty is always Israel first. And it's always, they're saying it. They say it with their mouths. They hold up signs, Israel first. They're doing it right in front of Trump with Trump, right? He is a Zionist. He's actually, if you get down to his skin level, he's a narcissist. If Muslim architectures were more powerful than Zionists, he would be a Muslim. If it were Catholics, he'd be a Catholic. Because deep down inside, on his body level, he's a clear narcissist. Days that I've supported Trump remain at zero. About 10 years ago, what's his name? Newt Gingrich called me, and he was the Speaker of the House. People know Newt Gingrich. He calls me up, and he's trying to rummage up support for Trump on the first election. What was that, 9 years ago? I can't remember. It was a long time ago, right? So he's trying to get support for the first election, right? Hmm. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, obviously. I mean, but can't you get somebody better than Trump? I mean, I don't trust that guy. And this was before the first election. And of course, then you get to the point where, well, now there's a lot more people that have actually started to but they always get you with the red pill, blue pill thing. Who did you want? Biden? Who did you want? Harris? Who did you want? Clinton? This is the red pill, blue pill psychological operation.
They say the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. So let's jump out of the 99th floor instead of the 100th floor, right?
Right.
So why don't we just take the steps and get out of here, right? And so what I'm getting to is the red pill, blue pill thing is a basic false choice. This is like 101 brainwashing. Like they give you, right out of the Matrix. Red pill or blue. I'm like, I don't even know your last name. I just met you for the first time. You're offering pills in something which is allegedly water. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to take, I should take the red one. Yeah, I'll take the red pill. That one looks more tasty. I'm sure it's different than the blue one. It's like the Princess Bride. Both things are poison, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's a great movie. So you've okay. So it's so much happening here, right? But you mentioned that you've been in Ireland. Was it last year or the year before? And actually, it sounds like from some of the reports that I've read, and I was watching a video that you shared on Twitter, or should I say X. I think this was last year, about 12 months ago. That actually basically looks like an actual military invasion has taken place already in Ireland, right? Like they've completely taken over Dublin, strategic positions all around the city. Like is that your interpretation? This is essentially a full-blown military operation at this point.
It must have been about 3 years ago. I'd have to look at my own.
Okay.
What I was publishing, but I was roughly 3 years ago, I think, when we were in Ireland, right? Anyway, there's so much going on, but it was very clear. Like I was over in Netherlands, we were over in Germany looking at Nord Stream and all that stuff, and often Hungary and Austria. We were looking at all these places, and back to Netherlands. I'm like, let's shoot over to Ireland because Ireland, they're going to take Ireland, right? So we shoot over there, and the first Uber driver, taxi driver, whatever he was, he's from Nigeria. I remember that. I said, "Oh, are you from Igbo tribe or Hausa? What tribe are you from?" I think it was from Igbo. Anyway, I said, "When you come here, do you look for people from your tribe or other Nigerians or other Africans or people, or just stay alone or whatever?" He goes, "Oh no, we go for our tribe and sub tribe and that sort of thing," which is what they do. I already knew that would be the answer because I spend most of my life out of the country, right? I spend most of my life out of the United States. I would say, I don't know, I've spent most of my life in almost 100 countries, right? So, I mean, I've been out with tribal people a lot. And so the idea that they're just coming in and they're going to blend in like a melting pot, that's bull, man. It's like they're going to come in with their own tribal law, their own languages, their own ecosystems, their own, what I call anthro-insula, human islands. And we will be balkanized, right? And destroyed, literally destroyed. And it's happening across the United States too. It's happening in Texas.
It's happening in the UK. I mean, we had 1 million Nigerians come into the country last year, right? And as you say, they're tribal. We're told that, well, first of all, that this is necessary. I mean, there's absolutely no argument to be made that this is necessary, but also that they're just going to sort of peacefully integrate and everything will be fine and they'll just become like normal English people. And that's incredibly dishonest of the people delivering that message, and the people that believe it are extremely naive. And it's getting to the point now where it's becoming a genuine existential threat to the nation, right? I mean, I don't know how much more of this we can actually deal with here in the UK, and as you say, it's even further ahead in Ireland at the moment.
Yeah, I think you've already crossed the Rubicon. In my view, I'm not sure that you can recover from this. And if you were going to, it will take extreme effort, to put it mildly, and to put it softly, because you're going to have to send them back, right? And they're not going to want to go, right? Yeah. And so, and you don't have a structure that's willing to do that. And so there you go, because it's the structure that's allowed them in. And if you stand up to it, they'll put you in prison, right? And so, your own, same in Ireland, same in Netherlands, same in all over the place, right? Because these structures were captured in advance. They were captured before we reached this point. And so, look what happened to Rome. And at the end of the day, the people that are coming in, they can't even run their own little villages, right? Right. And so they're not, and keep in mind, when you're a globalist, what you're doing is you're putting in a lot of people here, divide and conquer, Tower of Babel. You're putting in Afghans, Pakistanis, Hazar, all these different people, right? And most of them they're not going to have any sufficient numbers to influence the whole system, right? And so when it comes to anthropological warfare and targeting them through their phones and all kinds of other ways, you're going to be able to manipulate them to fight each other. And eventually, what's happening is first they're killing you and me. That's what's happening. First, they're killing us, the white people, straight up, right? And that's it, unambiguous. It's obvious. They say it, right? And Zionists like Ben Shapiro has said completely, nakedly obvious in clear terms, right? The browning of America. He's totally good with it. He's a total jab pusher and all that stuff, right? He's the whole ecosystem, right? And they'll kill us off and run us off who's not killed off. And then they'll have just all these disparate groups, and then they'll kill a lot of too. Like, they want the globalists want Panama. They don't want Panamanians. So they'll do it the same. They're not just going to do this to white people. They're going to do power structures everywhere. Yeah. Like you can see it in Thailand now. The Thai government is being usurped, and you can see it also I see it all over the place.
Yeah,
in Australia.
Thailand's an interesting one, actually. I noticed a couple of weeks ago, I think the new prime minister has just been made a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. They announced that. I was like, okay. Because there are a lot of people thinking, hey, I'll go and live in Thailand. I'll get away from this craziness in Western Europe. It's like, yeah. You're not going to escape this.
No, you won't.
So what do you
spent a lot of time in Thailand.
What do you think they're going to do in Thailand? You mentioned that you think they're going to partition it. Like, well, how would that actually? I've spent quite a bit of time there as well myself. Like, how would that actually manifest? Like, what are the different sectors that you think it would break up into?
Yeah. Now, keeping in mind, Thailand is the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security, right? It's a very important place, very, very important. And China knows that. America used to know it. And that's why we invested so much into keeping Thailand stable. In fact, after World War II, we pushed the British and the French away from Thailand, right? And because like the French wanted to take a big part back and yada, yada. Anyway, skipping past all that. How will they do it? Well, first of all, the southern three provinces down there by Malaysia already are pretty fractious. And so that should be quite easy. But then the southern part of Thailand, the Kra Isthmus, which is where they're building a railroad, like another path between the seas there, between the Andaman Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. That's critical, actually, because that'll allow China to bypass Strait of Malacca, especially with the canal that they're building from the Mekong River through Cambodia right now. So that will allow them to, through that canal from the Mekong, to bypass Vietnam and go right through the Gulf of Thailand over across the Kra Isthmus and bypass the Strait of Malacca. So it gives China a lot more resilience because the Strait of Malacca is like this to China, like Panama Canal is to us, right? It's very important. And so, but they're finding many ways around it, like their Belt and Road Initiative. They've got a train that goes all the way to Spain and Rotterdam and down into Thailand and over to Tehran. It just opened up, their train to Tehran just opened up. So, so they've got all these, for those who study Mackinder and Mahan, you know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, the Thailand, it's easily split with. Keep in mind, we help Thailand stay stable in the way that we help. Now, a lot of Thais don't know this. Maybe 1% of 1% will know what I'm talking about, and they'll be the most serious, educated in history. But what we did in Thailand, we helped King Rama IX, an excellent king, do the Thaiification program. And with the Thaiification program, you got to keep in mind, in Isan area of Thailand alone, there's, I think, 17 languages I've forgotten, like Khmer and Lao and so many languages, right? And so, and up in north, and there's other languages, and down in the south, and there's all the, if you land it in Thailand, you'll see all these different faces. They're not like homogenous people, right? But so with the Thaiification program, King Rama IX got everybody speaking Thai. You can speak your old languages, fine. Not saying that you can't. Please do. But you should be able to write Thai in very nice script and very well. Your pronunciation of Thai should be very good, and everybody should speak Thai. And that's part. And rallying around the King of Thailand is like the chain that they can, the anchor point, right? And it was very effective. And so he fought against drugs, fought against the opium, fought against things. He taught the Thais to be extremely resilient. That's why people call Thailand Teflon. Thailand is extremely resilient. You can hit them with a tsunami and they're like, we don't need help. Everybody else is like begging for help. Thailand's not, we got it. We got this thing. 200,000 dead, we got it. Cave rescue, we don't need SpaceX. Thailand is Thai, man. I love them. I was in many firefights in Thailand in the coups in 2010 and 2014. As soon as it's over, so a lot of people from a lot of countries will be running off to the psychologist. Thais are like, it's over. It's like the Lion King where the guy gets hit over the head. He's like, and he's like, it's in the past. Thais are like, it's in the past. I love Thais, man. They're like, that's why I call them. They're like bamboo, man. You run over them and they just stand right back up. And so, and that's partly because of their character and their whoever they are. It's just strong. But King Rama IX then nurtured that strength, and he taught them you should have fish ponds. You should have food security. You shouldn't be depending on the government for food. You should have a fish pond. You should garden. You should save in gold. You should all these things, right? You go to their museums in Thailand, and it's all about women should be strong. Women should be leaders, but women are women. Men are men. We have own responsibilities, but women should be also leaders in the military. Yes. I've been in a lot of fighting when there was women in the fighting, and they're serious people, right? And so what I'm getting to is that was what happened.
You got a country where the national sport is kickboxing, right? These are not weak people.
They don't play around, man. Thais don't play around. They smile a lot, but they know how to get up. When it comes to fighting, they're good at it. And they're very resilient and very love Thailand. When Thais go on vacation, I spent years in Thailand. You got like 10 Thais going. I've done this with them. Like I went out with a bunch of Thais to Bhutan on a vacation, right? You know what the Thais do before they go on vacation? They all have a big dinner together. Often they'll do like a picnic, and they make a load plan on Thai food. They're like, you bring the maki sauce, you bring the noodles, you bring the whatever, and then they all have enough Thai food so that and when the Thai food runs out, it's time to go back to Thailand. Right? They just love Thailand, and I do too. And so,
me too, man.
But that's resilience. That's resilience, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a bit about the cultural conditioning that's been going on. If we could bring it back to Europe, because one of the things that you mentioned, in fact, you brought it up earlier in this discussion, and it's in that blog post, which we will share a link to, about David Petraeus, where you bumped into him in LAX, and you were talking in particular about KKR, the private equity firm's investment in this European festival business called Superstruct. And there's been a lot of debate about this, because people in the cultural community, the music community here in the UK and more broadly across Europe, and actually I have quite a lot of friends who work in that space, know a lot of artists who work in that space, have really taken exception to the fact that KKR are involved in this. But I don't think that all of them really quite understand the importance of this cultural asset to this globalist Zionist assault that we're being subjected to. What is it about culture that is so crucial for them to have control of in terms of executing their agenda?
Right. Like, for instance, they don't want the Dutch to use the word Holland, right? They don't want to even don't use the word. And I love Netherlands despite their problems, but they are under severe attack, right? And they're as good as they are at business, they're subject to being fooled just like everybody else. Tulip mania from 1634 to 37, I think. Swept the nation. That there's still a little bit of that in them, right? And so they're vulnerable too. But what I'm getting to is music. We talked earlier about psychological operations, right? Yeah. And the WMD, which is intoxicants, right? Yes. The next level from that is music. Okay. Music is power. If you control the music, that's now intoxicants are a higher level WMD. So that's hydrogen bombs, and music is atomic bombs, right? And you mix those two together. Seriously. And so so what I'm getting to is music. Often, despite all the combat I've done, I don't have any PTSD, right? And people have often asked me, how do you do it? And, I'm depressed or whatever they tell me. And I'm like, I'm not depressed, obviously. I say, here it is. Don't do intoxicants, no alcohol, no prescriptions, none of that crap. No dope at all, period. Stop. And let me see your music playlist. Okay, sad music. Get rid of that shit, right? No sad music, right? Nothing, because you will instantly feel sad, right? All that country music, which I have loved growing up and all that. It's always about, when you think about it, though, it's always about my dog running away. My dog got drunk and, went hunting with the neighbor or something. My woman stole my dog, It's all and then rap music is like, let's go get high, get everybody pregnant, and kill a cop, right? I mean, that is straight up warfare.
Or kill each other as well. That's the thing with rap music.
Oh, keep in mind, the same people that are involved in investing in that music are investing in prisons, right?
Oh, yes.
So, oh yeah, so prisons, all that. This is all an architecture, an evil architecture, an architecture of perfect evil, right? And so, listen, if you're a moody person, try this. Stop listening to music, or listen to old music, like, Beethoven or something. You're not going to be moody and crazy anymore, right? I guarantee you, if you get rid of all that music, you're not going to see your moods go like you're having a sugar high every 15 minutes or something, right? And I don't know how all these different mess with your mind when you're like, here's a song that makes me happy, here's one that makes me sad. Here, and it's just one after another, like 3-minute clips of emotional roller coaster, right? But if you just get rid of it and go walk in the sunshine, like I walked up to Mount Everest a couple times, right? Just the bottom. You know what I mean? I would take breaks from the wars and just go walk around in the Himalayas. I got tired of going home, right? So because whenever I would leave from Afghanistan or Iraq and be in a lot of combat, everybody wants to see you and everybody wants you to fly somewhere and come over. And I'm like, done. I need a break. I'm going off to, Himalayas. I go walk around Annapurna or something, right? And just chill out. Then I'll go back to the wars, right? But I'm not listening to music while I'm doing that. You know what? I had a Pelican case filled with books, because back then, you couldn't have iPads or no iPads. And so, and I would just bring my books and my candles and I would read at night, that sort of stuff. So, I mean, if you don't listen to any sad music, I would stop listening to any music that you don't look at critically first. Like, look at it. What's this music designed to make me do, right? Because music, you play the Top Gun song and you'll join the Air Force or Navy. Not the Air Force, Navy guys. You listen to Top Gun and next thing you know, I got to get me an F-14 and, go around shooting up the place, right? You listen to the song Green Berets. You have no idea when I was a Green Beret, how many people are like, oh, I used to listen to that song when I was a kid, right? And then everybody, the movies come out for, G.I. Jane or whatever, Navy SEALs are the best ultra super dupers in the world. Next thing you know, everybody wants to be a SEAL, right? It's just information war. You can make everybody want to be a SEAL, or everybody want to be a fighter pilot, or you can make everybody want to be an accountant. It would not be difficult with information war. Accountants get all the chicks, so, here I am rolling in the hood with my accountant friends at KKR. Look, finance dudes at KKR, man, they're in the big jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. If looking how the KKR people live, you'd want to be a finance guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's plenty of, if you follow Liquidity or one of those accounts on Instagram, then they've made the Wall Street lifestyle look really cool. Even though it's actually, I mean, it's well paid, but really extraordinarily boring. When you get into what they actually do day to day. But I think that's a fascinating term that you use there. These are the intoxicants in the music is basically a WMD. Right, because actually one of the reasons that I think that they've been able to get so far along in progressing this program that they're pushing, not least because they've been doing it for centuries, as you've described, is that people are basically just distracted. It's like the shiny lights and the escapism of these festivals and the music, and the world's real crazy, but actually we'll just give you a way to come over here and ignore it for a couple of days, and maybe it will sort itself out while you're stood in a field cheering away, listening to these DJs or whatever it might be, and a lot of the messaging that gets pushed as well, because there's a very particular progressive liberal worldview that gets promoted through these channels that are owned by KKR that are used as part of this all-out assault, basically, on humanity at the moment.
Yeah, smoke dope and go have sex at a rave and get hit by next to Gaza. I mean, who set that up in Gaza, right? I mean, That was a clear green flagged attack. That was obvious green flag attack.
Right.
That was clearly a Zionist instigated attack. Of course, the United States and Israel have supported Hamas since forever, and we blame it on Iran, which they probably support them some too. But we openly support them, right? Not ambiguous. We say it and do it, right?
Yeah,
the checks, right? Because we need them as an enemy. Because they're part of the game. They're part of the game. You need the kayfabe. You need both wrestlers fight. We need, this is why, so many Americans now are expecting some massive, false flag attack in the United States to blame it on Iran, right? And because I mean, if you kill 100,000 Americans suddenly, Americans are going to be like, yeah, go ahead and nuke Iran, right? I mean, they will instantly do that, right? And we're talking about people that will set up, a 9/11 or attack the USS Liberty or do the October 7th attack, which was very clear black operation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, October 7th, I mean, anyone who believes the official narrative about anything these days, I've got to question your sanity. But October 7th, I mean, that was pure artifice, the whole thing. The idea that, I mean, because that's basically one of the most heavily surveilled pieces of land on Earth, right? I mean, so the idea that the Shin Bet and, all of the other pieces of the Israeli intelligence apparatus are just going to allow that thing to play out for like 6-7 hours without any kind of intervention, and that they didn't know about it ahead of time. It's just lunacy, isn't it?
And it took 7 or 8 hours for IDF to respond, right? Now, keep in mind, they have Black Hawk helicopters, and I've been in a lot of Black Hawks, as you can imagine, in combat. And let me tell you how long it takes to crank up a Black Hawk. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. If it's a cold Black Hawk, I mean cold, not like hot cocked and, not like having the pilot sitting there strapped in already, but a cold Black Hawk can go wheels up in 4 minutes, right? And so the QRF should have been off the ground maximum 6 minutes, quick reaction force. And they go 180 knots. Even if you were on the other side of Israel, you should have been in combat just very quickly, right? 20, 30 minutes, right? You should have been in combat instantly. Now, I've said that before, and people say, no, you don't understand how this works. We got to make a plan. Just be quiet. Listen, I was in special forces and I did combat as a combat correspondent as well. And let me tell you what, this is how it would really work. If you're shooting Americans and I'm the commander, it's going to be like this. Go to where the shooting is, find them and kill them, right? Mitigate them immediately. You put your body between the enemy and our people. It's time for heroes to do hero shit, right? And so, so you get out there, and if we lose you, if we get some helicopter shot down, we'll bring more, right? If we lose 30, 50, 100 guys, we'll bring more, right? We're going to get you. We're going to get every one of you, right? And you just get right on it. You don't mess around. You don't be like, we're going to make a plan because we're afraid to fight. It's on, bro. It's on. You know what I mean? And that's how it should have been. They should have been in contact with the enemy 20, 25 minutes. It should have been like that. They should have been like, shooting from the helicopters. They should have been, if it was me in my neighborhood and I heard shooting like that and I thought we were under attack, I would be like taking my position, waiting. As soon as he steps in that road with a rifle, he's going to get popped, right? I mean, seriously, it's like, that's the way it should have been. The Israeli defense forces and the police are everywhere, right? They should have been responding within minutes and laying lead down. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean you're going to stop the enemy immediately, but once they have to engage in you, they're not engaging in your people, right? So I want you to come fight me, and you might get me, but at least I'm slowing you down, and my friends are going to come, right? And my friends' friends are going to come, right? And then we're going to eventually turn the tide on this thing, and we're going to whip your ass, right? And that's the way it should have been, but it did not happen like that. It did not happen because it was intended, right? They allowed it to happen, and they allowed the hostages to be taken because they need the hostages as perpetual casus belli. Cause for war, right? They need those hostages to not be released because the hostages are the energy that keeps people going, oh, it's Iran now. Oh, it's the hostages. Oh, it's Iran now. Keep in mind, throughout my time running around this world and reading so many old books and being with so many different types of people, I've realized a few things. One of those is professional victims are always predators. It's like a Principia Mathematica, right? PV equals P. Professional victim equals predator, right? And so all these professional victims out there, that's a predator, right? And so, when they start throwing the professional victim, oh, you just don't like me. Oh, yeah, whatever. No, I don't like you, actually. And your magic wand is broken, right? You're going to say, oh, we should just allow them, listen, people have a right to self-defense, and that includes us. Right? And the predatory actions that are occurring, like invading the United States and those sorts of things, it's time for Americans to say that is enough, right? It's time for English and Scottish and Irish and everybody else and the whalers or whatever you call them, the Welsh. It's time for everybody to say that's enough. It's time for the French and the Spanish to say that's enough. The Italians stand up, right? Germans, be Germans again.
Yeah, no, that's great actually, because I was going to ask you. I feel like we could sit here all afternoon, like quite literally, to be honest with you, and I'm really enjoying the conversation. But just one final question for you, and you've kind of segued into it perfectly, which is what would your advice be to people in Britain right now who are looking around at the situation and thinking this is untenable? What are we going to do? Like, what would be your words of advice to us?
Remember, cowards can all contain the germ of treason. Now, I'm not saying people won't get afraid, because fear is natural among most of us, right? Despite all the combat I did, I can still get afraid, obviously, right? Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be alive. I'm lucky to be alive anyway. But cowardice contains the seeds of treason. Some people are just they're very cowardice. Cowardly. A breeze will come through and they'll just switch sides because they're afraid, right? And so you've got to be cognizant of that sort of behavior. And this is straight out of the Bible. And you've got to kind of cleanse your ranks of people because those people will be traitors to you, right? And that's why courage is, and remember, courage and cowardice are both infectious. So you must demonstrate courage to create more courage. If you demonstrate courage, you will create courage. If you demonstrate cowardice, you'll create cowardice, right? So you have to demonstrate courage, right? And so, and that's very important as leaders. And so the next thing is making sure that we don't just put our head down and just do my job, sir. Like American Border Patrol on the border. It's like ordinary men, right? A lot of the Nazis were just ordinary men, right? They were just doing my job, sir. So I've been across the entire U.S. southern border. It took months to do that, right? And I saw our Border Patrol load up thousands of people on the buses that are invading us. And I would ask them, like, why are you doing this? And they'd be like, I'm just doing they would say it all the time. They'd actually say it in those words. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the video of me in Hong Kong confronting a British police officer. He was a Hong Kong police officer, but he was a white commander. And I call him out on the street, and they come up to me. He puts his hand on his weapon, right? He's got his hand on his pistol. His guys are getting ready to tear me to shreds, right? And I'm confronting him on the streets. And he actually says on that video, I'm just doing my job. He said it. And the Hong Kongers went absolutely nuts and went viral. It was on video, many different angles, because it was fighting going on in the streets, tear gas and all that stuff. And he actually said, I'm just doing my job. And so what I'm getting to is, don't just do your job. Your job is treason. If your job is treason, that's not your job, right? And when I would ask Border Patrol, why are you helping load the buses? They would say, oh, the Mexican cartels are doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. Ceasefire, lock and clear. The Mexican cartels, unless you're in the Mexican cartel, are not letting loadings up. You are, right? Yeah. They'd say, yeah, but I gotta get a paycheck, right? Like everybody else, Most of them most of them did not get angry. Most of them are like, they didn't want to load those buses, most of them. Some of them were like totally enthusiastic about it. But others, they were like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here to guard the United States, and yet I've been ordered not to. So what's your job? Is your job to take orders, or your job is to defend the United States, right? Is your job to defend the United Kingdom? Is your job to define Republic of Ireland, right? Or is your job to be Mary Lou McDonald, the leader of Sinn Féin? What a clown, man. I was with her in a bar, and she's, I don't drink, but anyway, we're in this, Mary Lou McDonald, leader of Sinn Féin, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with her, yeah.
And she's so proud, like, oh, we're helping them get in. And I'm like, you should be in a dungeon. You know what I mean? It's like, seriously, seriously.
Yeah. Well, the last time I looked, I think Sinn Féin's upper ranks was occupied by a bunch of African women. The last thing I saw, which is just madness when you think back like 20 or 30 years ago, what Sinn Féin was and what it was supposed to stand for, is just complete lunacy. Look, Michael, this has just been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. There's some really strong words there and loads to revisit. I'm particularly excited about the idea that courage breeds courage, and I think that's what I'm personally going to take out of this the most. But for now, just Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for joining us on UK Column. For everyone at home, thanks for watching.
Thank
Yes,
you, sir.
sir.